What's going on, guys? It's been a while since we did a live stream. I'm not sure if everything's working properly, so as people come in, let me know. Otherwise, I'll have no idea. Hopefully everything goes smooth, because like I said, haven't done it in a while. Been busy, been working a lot. Let's let some people pop in, hopefully. There we go. Get some people in here and we can get started. Oh, wait. It has been a while. Make sure to type in chat. Let me know. Make sure that's working. Make sure everything's going as it should. I really would appreciate it. Hey, Mama Stormy. Happy 4th of July. Happy 4th of July. Independence Day. Yeah, it's been a while, Mimi. It's been a while. I've been working like 60, 70 hours a week. I really just never feel like coming in here and doing anything, to be honest. But Crime Circus put this video out, and one of my subscribers who they're always emailing, talking to me, giving me their thoughts, and they've been on Brent Kopacka this entire time, and they sent an email with a link of Crime Circus's video, Kohberger and Brent Kopacka Connections, Moscow, Idaho, an investigative series special, and I thought I would watch it and see what it is, because like I understand that there's an opportunity for Brent Kopacka to be involved in this, but I haven't really seen anything that tells me he was, and I'm just figuring maybe this will change my mind, maybe it won't, but I'm going to give my commentary on Crime Circus's video. I'm usually like a big fan of Crime Circus. I think he does a good job. I think he explains really well between when he's speculating versus when he's reporting facts. I don't know if all of you are familiar with him. I'm sure most of you are. But Drip Drop is one of a kind. But how's everybody been? Happy 4th of July to everybody. Oh yeah, Mimi, that's why I do it. The money. Can't help it. Hopefully, I work enough overtime, and when this case comes up, I can take off that whole case and live stream. Watch the case with everybody. If they allow cameras in the courtroom, if we're able to watch it live and give commentary live. But, this video is what I really want to watch with you guys from Crime Circus, and I don't have a whole lot of time today, so we're just going to jump into it as quick as possible, and we'll comment where needed. Like I said, this is Crime Circus, Drip Drop, and Bryan Kohberger and Brent Kopacka Connections. Let's see what they say.
In this episode, we're going to discuss Brent Kopacka and the alleged connection between Bryan Kohberger and 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Who was Brent Kopacka? We're going to talk all about it. And we're going to talk about Buddy, too. Without further ado, let's jump right into this episode and see what I have to say for myself this time.
Alright, so Brent Kopacka, he's the Army veteran that Bryan Kohberger's dad mentioned and when they were pulled over by Indiana State Police on the highway on the way from Washington to Pennsylvania. He mentioned him, said that all this crazy stuff was happening, and ever since that, people have had theories, I guess you would say, that Brent Kopacka and Bryan Kohberger knew each other and committed this crime together. For a lot of people, it helps them understand, well, it wasn't just one person, it was two people, and the other suspect is no longer with us because he had suffered from PTSD and took his roommates hostage and shot at police, and you know how that goes, right? So he committed the big S by cop, and he was a veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, I believe, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he was. But that doesn't mean that he couldn't have done this crime. He couldn't have been involved. Now, like I said at the beginning, I haven't really seen any reason to believe that he was involved other than, well, yeah, this was going on, this was close, but other people they believe otherwise. And Crime Circus, he's put out a number of videos with Brent Kopacka and Bryan Kohberger. That's where I get most of my Brent Kopacka information from, is from watching Crime Circus. So for this to be a special from him, I want to see what he has to say and see if he can flip me from, I don't really believe Brent Kopacka was involved in this at all, and see if he can flip me over to, well, maybe he was. There's no way we can know for sure unless somebody tells us, or we have video evidence, or somebody pulls out some old pictures from them being friends sometime before to know whether they really knew each other or not. But this is going to be a lot of evidence, right? Let's check chat out real quick before we start back. Did BK's dad ever meet Kopaka or hear Bryan talk about Kopaka prior to the crime? I don't know. I have no idea. Let's see what he has to say. Can everybody hear it all right?
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Crime Circus. My name is Drip Drop, and I'll be your host as always. In this episode, let's start it with a boom. Some of you out there might be wondering, who was Brent Kopacka? Some of you have heard his name. Others think you've heard it all. Be prepared for some new revelations in this video. You don't want to miss any. Don't skip through, and make sure you make it to the end, because this video is going to be filled with a lot of information that you're going to want to soak up. So it's time to turn into a sponge, because you want to learn everything that I have to say right here. We're going to move through this information fast as possible. You may want to watch this video twice or even rewind certain parts so you don't miss a thing.
So, I mean, he's just pushing out of how important it is to pay attention, because the devil is in the details. Everything that you need to know, if you don't know certain details of a situation, then you can't prove anything, right? You can't really know anything. The more details you get, the more clear the picture becomes, obviously. But some people believe that you can have a gap this big and just jump it without adding anything there to give any substance, any reason for it.
Let's get started. First, we need to know, who was Brent Kopacka? Well, Brent Kopacka was a soldier who served in the United States Army. Thank you for serving, Brent Kopacka. We really do appreciate you. Brent spent some time over in Afghanistan in his youth so he could fight for our freedom. It was the USA versus Afghanistan, and he was over there doing what he was told to do. He came home a hero with a Purple Heart, and he had PTSD. He was mentally traumatized from the things that he did and the things that he saw over there.
All right, so it's pretty normal for a soldier to come home with PTSD after being at war. I never went to war. I was in the Army. I was military police. I was supply, logistics, maintenance. I had three MOSs while I was in the Army, but military police was what I really wanted to do and what I did. The unit I was with was a MP unit. So just because he went and he's a veteran and he served our country, it doesn't take away from the fact that he could have been involved in a crime afterwards. As a matter of fact, the PTSD would make it more likely that he would suffer some mental health issues outside, right? And that he might be capable of doing things that other people wouldn't be capable of. But I hate the narrative that just because he was in the Army, just because he went to war, that he was somehow some skilled assassin. That is insane to me, right? Like, if you knew the type of people that actually joined the Army, then you wouldn't have this idea in your mind that just because he was a former soldier from war, that he's just Billy Badass type of guy, right? Maybe he was. Maybe. But just being in the military, it doesn't equate to that. It doesn't mean that he would have easily been able to go in and commit a crime like this. It just doesn't.
He was a trained assassin.
There he goes.
Of the Army. That's right. He was most likely over there doing some real killing. And there was a lot of people over there living in little mud huts, and they couldn't exactly defend themselves.
Well, we know where Crime Circus stands on the Iraq War. I think a lot of us, Iraq and Afghanistan, a lot of us agree that it was a lot of lies that got us into that, and it was not a great deal for our country, right? But at the end of the day, we were attacked and we responded, and all the facts in between that is beyond our control at this time, right? But the guy went, he served his country, he did what he was supposed to do, and he came back. And he had mental health issues. That's important.
So I can understand why he might have had PTSD, because he probably had a conscience and he felt bad about the things that he did and saw. It's got to be really hard to live with those thoughts inside of your mind. I know a lot of my viewers out there struggle with the thoughts in your mind. And I just want to let you know mental health is important, and I care about you, and Crime Circus will always be a safe place for you. Moving on. According to
Alright, so I definitely have to say something about this. Mental health is important, and I know a lot of you guys are mentally insane, right? I'm a little crazy too. We all have to be to be interested in this stuff. You have to be a little off kilter, but if you feel like that you're out of control, or that you're not making the choices, that things are just happening, whatever, talk to somebody, get help. Don't ignore your mental health. It's really important. No matter how big and bad and tough you think you are, mental health could break you down.
Background check that I had run on Brent Kopacka. For a period of time in his life, he lived in Easton, Pennsylvania. Some of you out there might be thinking, so what? What about it, Drip Drop? Well, Bryan Kohberger just happened to go to college at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. That college is about a 12-minute drive from where Brent Kopacka was living. But that's not all. Bryan Kohberger also went to DeSales University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And that college is only about a 10-minute drive from where Brent Kopacka was living.
Alright, so that's our first connection, right? It's not necessarily a connection, but it's our first. They both have lived in eastern Pennsylvania at the same time. I don't know, he hasn't said yet. Maybe they were there at the same time. If they were there at the same time, around the same age group, and living within 10 minutes of each other, then there's a possibility that they could have knew each other, right? Nothing solid, nothing concrete. But we also have to take into account that coincidences, they only stack so high, right? So we have to watch out for coincidences to start stacking up on us. Because if they do, you have to evaluate. Maybe it all is just a coincidence. Maybe it has nothing to do with Bryan Kohberger whatsoever. Maybe they never met each other, never talked to each other, never were around each other, and they just happened to live on two opposite sides of the country at the same times. And it's making me think about it already, just thinking about that.
I'm going to put some maps on the screen so you can visualize how close these locations really are. You can see the Northampton Community College right here, and then you can see Brent's house over here. Now
So 10 minutes. 10 and 11 minutes, right? That was cool.
Here you can see where DeSales University is in Bethlehem. That's a 10-minute drive to Brent's house. And then from the house that Brent was living in up to Bryan Kohberger's parents' house, you could see you could get there in under an hour. Probably 45 to 50 minutes realistically. That's under an hour drive away. It's really not that far. Here is a picture of the house that Brent was living in at the time. It was 4-bedroom, 4-bath, 3,413 square feet.
Oh, wow.
Pretty nice house, eh?
That's a really nice house. A really nice house. So, does his family have money?
Do you think he had roommates? Do you think Bryan Kohberger was possibly one of his roommates while Bryan was going to college in that town? How in the world was Brent Kopacka able to afford that house with his disability payments from the military?
Alright, so that's a possibility, but that's one of those stretches I was talking about earlier where just because they lived 10 minutes from each other, or Bryan Kohberger's school was 10 minutes from where Brent Kopacka lived, doesn't necessarily mean that they know each other, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind and pay attention to. But they should be able to find out who would have been his roommates at that time, right? Seems like they would. Now, I saw a comment I wanted to read, so let's just read a few, starting with Juniper Rob. I think Kopaka is the perfect candidate to have done this with Bryan, but you would think that Ann Taylor would have made some noise about this if Bryan implicated him. Subpoenas for Brent's phone, etc. I agree with that. J. Junior Nana, sending love. Thank you. Paula Harvey. Oh, let's hear the rest of the story from Miss Paula Harvey. Brent K. was a former ranger, so he actually was a trained killer, but I'm not saying he did anything, just that he had the skills for the crime. Okay, I don't want to get too deep into this, but just because you're an Army Ranger, you could be a parachute rigger and be an Army Ranger, right? So even though I don't want to take away from Brent Kopacka what he did. I don't know what all he did. I know he got a Purple Heart, right? So I'm not saying that he was just some lame soldier. I'm just saying that he wasn't necessarily a trained assassin, right? There are a load of jobs, and even the Rangers, they need support, right? So I'm not sure what his job was, whether he was infantry and a ranger and kicking in doors, or whether he dealt with ammunitions, or whether he dealt with computers, or whether he was a support staff. I don't know. I don't even know that he was a ranger, but I'm taking your word for it here to say that he was. But that doesn't mean that he was necessarily a trained killer still. It heightens the chances. I mean, it really raises the chances, though. I'll give you that. That's what I saw and I wanted to get to. Because I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to take away anything from Brent Kopacka or what he's done. He hurt his own legacy at the end of his life, whether that be PTSD, whatever. When you take your roommates hostage and you shoot at cops, you know, it's gonna be that, you know. So I don't want to take away from him or anything that he's done, but it's just, you know, it's possible he could have done it. Let's read a couple more. I'd like to know if Buddy's owners still have his blue collar or if it was missing when they found him. Rest in heaven, Buddy. I have no idea about that. I haven't really paid a lot of attention to the dog, so I'm going to learn a lot about that in this video too, because I know that from what I heard, a dog had been found a few weeks before and it had been butchered, basically. And a lot of people said that could have been someone practicing, or could have just been someone with a demented mind. Of course it was somebody with a demented mind, right? But getting ready for something bigger. And maybe it's connected to the Idaho 4. Wild speculation based on no facts. Are you saying, what's wild speculation based on no facts? The Bryan Kohberger and Brent Kopacka connections? I mean, he's given facts, so it just depends on whether or not that equals that they knew each other or that he could have been involved. We're only 4 minutes into a 19-minute video, though, so let's keep going.
We need to know the answers to these questions. And yes, every soldier deserves to rest in peace, but every soldier has a story to tell. I said it before and I'll say it again. Thank you for serving, Brent Kopacka. We really do appreciate you here in the United States. Not only the United States, but he fought for people's freedoms worldwide. Even for Canadians, too. And you know that's true. So what do you think the odds are that Brent Kopacka was living so close to Bryan Kohberger in that small area of Pennsylvania? Were they roommates? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they ran into each other at a coffee shop downtown, or even maybe a little vegan restaurant. We don't know.
That's right. We don't know. We don't know if they knew each other or not. But you've got both of them living in Pennsylvania around the same time within 10 minutes of each other, or at least operating within 10 minutes of each other. And then you've got both of them living in Washington at the same time within minutes of each other. It's hard for me to say this because it's not, but like I said with conspiracies, right? Or coincidences, I'm sorry. Coincidences only stack so high. So when you've got these two people living in these two separate places on opposite ends of the country, that's 2,000 miles apart. They just never met each other, never knew each other, but they happen to live in the same areas of the states. It could happen. It's a coincidence. But if we have more and more connection, that it's going to become less and less of a coincidence, right? Am I wrong there?
Maybe this has something to do with the study that Bryan Kohberger posted on Reddit approximately 8 months before this crime. Maybe that's when they first came into communication, because Bryan Kohberger was not living in Idaho 8 months prior to November 13th. It's quite possible that Brent Kopacka was a participant in that study. Now let's see what else I have here. According to my research, Bryan Kohberger moved to the Pullman, Washington area around August of 2022. Brent Kopacka allegedly moved to the Pullman, Washington area about 1 month before this crime. Brent lived in coffeehouse apartments. As you can see on the screen right here, this is what the building looked like. Bryan Kohberger lived in steptoe apartments, and this is what those apartments look like. As you can see on this map here, those apartment complexes...
Okay, so let's think. So Bryan moved in August, and then Brent moved there in October. So Brent wasn't there very long at all. He was only there like 2 months before he went on this rampage, right? With what he did do with his roommates and the police and all that Kohberger's father was talking about while they were pulled over. He had only been there with those roommates a couple months, right? So the fact that Bryan moved there and then Brent moved there right before all this took place, and then Brent ends up losing his life.
Are only about 2 miles away from each other. So somehow, someway, Brent Kopacka and Bryan Kohberger, both with the exact same initials, ended up living very close to each other all the way across the country, randomly at the same time both times. This is crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Do you believe in coincidences or not? Brent Kopacka was passed away by SWAT team at approximately 4 a.m. on December 15th. That's almost exactly 1 month later from the Moscow slayings on November 13th. And apparently at about the exact same hour, 4 a.m.
Have we heard anything from friends of Brent on whether he changed his routine or his actions or his personality? Did any of that change after the Idaho crimes took place up until he did this? Was this a slow burn from something that happened at the beginning of November and he was trying to process and trying to deal with what he had done and it worked up to this certain level? Or was he straight A normal the whole time and then suddenly something snaps and everything went down? Like, how did his roommates explain him? Has anybody talked to any of them? Is there any interviews with any of them that say that? Because that's what I feel like is missing from if Brent Kopacka was involved in this, is that he would have been acting different, right? Like, there would have been a known connection between him and Kohberger if they were connected at all. Let's see, what is people saying? Miss K. I was surprised how many serial killers had linkage to serving in defense forces in their background, including BKT, the serial killer BK studied. Green River, Jeffrey Dahmer, there's at least 20 I know. Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain type of person to be able to go to another country, serve their country, without the questions asked, right? Now, there's a lot of engagement policy and stuff like that, but you have to be a special type of person to be able to aim a firearm at somebody, another human being, and wait for the word to pull the trigger. Now, it's a little different when you're in combat, back and forth, but for people going in on a mission, they may be catching people unknowingly, right? So if you have special forces, those type of guys, the things that they're good at doing, it's going to translate to the real world. Now, whether they can deal with their emotions and their control of their self or not, the capability is always going to be there. So 20 people that have gone on to do some insane things, right? It's a pretty low number when you look at it compared to how many people are trained and experience all those things.
Wow. Is this real life or some sort of scripted movie that we're all watching? Of course it's real, however this is quite bizarre. Also interestingly, this was not a regular police department or sheriff's office. The man that fired the fatal shot into Brent Kopacka was a Washington State University police sergeant. Now what do you think the Washington State University police was doing on scene? That's the school that Bryan Kohberger went to. Brent Kopacka was not enrolled at the university. Not only that, this was not on university grounds. This was an apartment complex outside of the university. It wasn't a dorm.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was a Washington State University police officer that shot Kopaka. What, did he live in student housing? Was his roommate students? Because that could be... That's interesting.
This was just an apartment in Pullman. So what was the Washington State University police doing there? We need to know. Do you think any of this information has been a boom? Maybe a couple booms?
That last part is a boom, because why would it be Washington State University police? Unless that's like student housing and they're there. Or just they're called in for backup maybe because it's a small town. But I don't know, that seems strange, especially that they would take the shot on Kopaka.
I think so. But your opinion matters to me. So let me know down below. Also, I'd like to let you know, according to my deep research, Pullman, Washington is one of the safest places to live in the entire world. Before SWAT team decided to put a bullet in Brent Kopacka, a United States hero, a purple-hearted soldier, the last passing away in Pullman was 7 years prior to this. And before that, it was another 7 years. People don't just get passed away there. It's not normal. It's not common. It's not like Jacksonville, Florida. It's not like Orlando.
That's insane. It was 7 years between deaths from Brent Kopacka to whoever was killed before him. That is insane. That is a very safe city. Very safe. And, I mean, you got to think, this happened with Brent Kopacka, but he's not from there, right? He came there. He was only there for a little over a month.
Florida. It's a really safe place to live. So what do you think the odds are that a Washington State University police sergeant on the SWAT team happens to pass somebody away approximately a month after the Moscow slayings? I guess things really heated up around there, and you could probably cut the tension with a knife.
Now that's a stretch connection right there, to me, in my opinion, right? Now, yeah, I get what he's trying to draw there is that, all of a sudden, even though nobody ever gets killed in this town, right? We have this event going down in Moscow, and we don't know who did it. And then suddenly someone gets taken out by police right next door in Pullman when nothing else ever happens there. Could it be connected? But I think that's a stretch, right? At any given time, you could have someone come in suffering from mental health issues and do something very out of the ordinary. The fact that these things happen close by, maybe Brent Kopacka was involved in the Idaho case. Maybe he isn't, but maybe that case happening so close to him might have triggered something in him, right? Knowing that somebody went in and did this just 10 minutes away from where he lays his head down, it might have triggered into him to flash back somehow, or to trigger his PTSD and make him feel like he needs to be on the defensive.
Also, I'd like to remind you that only 7 hours after Brent Kopacka passed away, Bryan Kohberger was pulled over twice with his daddy in Indiana. Another coincidence? I don't think so. What did they find in Brent Kopacka's possession or in his apartment? Surely they must have allegedly found something that made them want to pull over Bryan Kohberger immediately. They apparently didn't get what they wanted the first time, so they pulled him over again a second time 10 minutes later.
Okay, so right here, Drip Drop is trying to make the connection between when Brent got shot, all of a sudden they're pulling over Bryan Kohberger, right? I don't know. I don't know if that's legit or not. I don't know if after they shot him, they went in and that made them want to pull over Kohberger to get a reaction. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm not grasping where he's going with that.
Why did they do it? All we can do is guess because they won't tell us, which makes me wonder, what do they have to hide? Here's a boom for you. Did you know that Brent Kopacka has a connection to Coeur d'Alene? Just like Jack, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana was born there too. What are the odds? How is Brent Kopacka connected to all these different locations? From Pennsylvania to Pullman to Coeur d'Alene, Brent Kopacka was really getting around with his disability payment.
Now, let's go back into those coincidences. They only stack so high, so now he's got a connection to where all of them were born. From Coeur d'Alene, where they're from. Did he possibly know them? Is he the connection between them and Kohberger? Now, I'm not saying that he is, so nobody take that. I don't have any reason so far to believe he was involved in the Idaho case. I'm starting to feel like there's a good chance that him and Bryan Kohberger have crossed paths at some point in time, but I don't know that, right? But he's starting to get me there. We're 9 minutes and 36 seconds into this video. It's 19 minutes long, so maybe there's some more that really ties in to put Kopacka into the Idaho 4 case, or ties him into he definitely knew Bryan Kohberger. Because we have to remember, even if he did know Kohberger, doesn't mean that he was connected to the homicides.
Background check, that's where I found that Brent Kopacka had a connection to Coeur d'Alene, because he registered a cell phone from that location, which wouldn't be on his background check unless he was there. Also, check this out right here. As you can see, Brent Kopacka's parents live only a very short drive away from Moscow, Idaho. It's not that far, and that's probably where they do a lot of their shopping. Also in their driveway, you can see a light-colored Hyundai Elantra and a big white truck.
Didn't Kohberger say that he went to Moscow because the shopping was better? Is that what he said?
And as a lot of you know in this case, big white trucks and Hyundai Elantras, they're a big piece of the puzzle. So this investigation is ongoing, and this stuff's important. It really does make you wonder, why did they want to destroy the house so fast? Bryan Kohberger hasn't even had his day in court yet. So why did they want to destroy the house?
I want to go off on that for a minute, because that is the stupidest thing that I've ever seen. What benefit will they get from destroying that house before this case, especially if this trial goes off in October, and we're talking about less than a year, right? Why would you destroy the house before the trial? that is only going to fuel absolutely every conspiracy theory there is out there. If you're going to go out of your way to try to demolish this house before he goes to trial, when you know good and well that plenty of high-profile cases like this have had the scene of the crime revisited by the jury, right? We saw it in the Alex Murdaugh trial. We're seeing it right now in the YNW Melly trial, where the prosecutors want to let the jury visit the vehicle, because in his case, that's where the crime took place, with all the bullet holes and whatnot. And the defense is saying, no, that would prejudice the jury because of the blood and so and so. And right now, they're arguing over that right now. But it's the jury they should be able to go in and see the house and the way it is, because from the profiles of the house that we have, from the schematics where the rooms are, from the sliding glass door where the killer supposedly would come in, he has to walk straight past Dylan's bedroom door, go upstairs, come down, go across to the other side of the house to where Xana and Ethan's bedroom was. Xana's bedroom, Ethan was there, you know what I'm talking about. And then come back out past Dylan's bedroom again and go back out those sliding glass doors. So he would have had to pass Dylan's bedroom 3 times walking through that. So when your eyewitness is alive and well and apparently heard things, yelled out, opened the door, saw the person responsible, we don't have any known motive or anything, right? So with no understanding so far that we know for sure of why Bryan Kohberger would commit this crime in the first place, does it make sense that he wouldn't have went after the last remaining witness who opened the door to see him? He had on his mask and everything. It would bring in the credibility of the witnesses. The jury would be able to tell, should you be able to hear what's going on in this room to this room? Does it make sense that a person would come in and go this way and this way and this way and this way, but never try to open this door or walk past the witness looking out this door? It would show whether the person who committed the crime walking out would be able to tell that Dylan's door cracked open or that somebody was there. It would give a lot of understanding. They would be able to see how it is from the first floor to there. They would be able to point out where the DoorDash was found, where the victims were found. It would bring so much to be able to revisit that house. And why would the prosecution not want to, unless it hurts their case, right? Why would the prosecution not want the jury to go there and to get a feeling for how this could have taken place? Because this is a very quick crime with no trail outside the house. Apparently, according to the defense, no DNA in Kohberger's vehicle, which you have to think this is a messy crime, right? So how does he not track stuff out? How does all this take place without the roommate who's on the same floor as 2 of the victims and directly up under the other 2 victims? How does that person not know what's going on? And if they did know, what took 8 hours, right? Let's not get into all that right now. But they should definitely not tear down that house. And if they do, it's only going to bring up more and more conspiracy theories. And just calling them conspiracy theories doesn't mean that they're not real. Just calling them conspiracy theories doesn't mean that they couldn't happen in real life. It's conspiracy. People are conspiring to cover up, to change, to not tell, to whatever. And we don't know who, but a conspiracy theory isn't necessarily unbelievable. It's just a conspiracy theory. You're going to have them for sure, and they might be true, because why else are you trying to tear down the house so fast? It's annoying to me. It's like, if everything is on the up and up in this case, and the police have done their job correctly, and they don't have anything to hide, and they believe they have Bryan Kohberger dead to rights, then why in the hell would you do things that would make the public, or possibly the jury, feel otherwise? You should want to show every piece of the evidence.
Visiting the crime scene can be a super important part of court. Just like in the Alex Murdaugh case, the jury said that it was super important that they saw the crime scene. Nobody in South Carolina seemed to be in a super fast rush to be destroying Alex Murdaugh's property.
Exactly.
But for some reason, the University of Idaho wants that house destroyed. And then the jury won't even be able to do a walkthrough. They won't be able to walk by Dylan Mortensen's room 3 times. They won't be able to go up to the 3rd floor to see where the horror happened. They won't be able to go into Xana's room and see how the BLOOD was able to seep through the wall so we could all see it from the outside. The jury...
See, that's something too that's bothered me a lot, is those pictures, what's showing, right? And those pictures of that blood trickling down the outside of the house means that blood had pulled up and run and soaked through the floor, insulation, sheetrock, and drip out of the siding, where the siding meets the block. That had to be a lot of blood. But that's also coming from where the people found the bodies, right? So how did they check for a pulse? Why? If you see that 8 hours later, 8 hours after the fact. And you know, something else I heard, I've had to work a lot, like I said, so I haven't really got to comment on everything that I've seen lately. But when people were saying that Ethan's body was blocking the door, which would have to mean that, like, he wasn't immediately passed away, right? Because if you got Kohberger, or let's not say that, nope, let me correct myself in real time. When you've got a suspect and he commits these crimes and he leaves Ethan there, he can't shut the door and then Ethan be blocking the door, right? He can't do that. It would have to be maybe he shut the door and Ethan was still alive working toward the door. But if that's the case, then Dylan didn't hear that. Dylan didn't hear someone moaning in pain, screaming for help, trying to save themselves. You didn't hear that, but you heard everything else? I don't know. That whole Ethan having to be pushed out of the way with the door to open the door and all that, I don't know how true that was. I'm trying to remember where I heard it, but I feel like I heard it from multiple sources saying that that was being reported to be the case. So don't take that as fact, but that's what I heard. And if that's the case, then that would mean that Ethan wasn't dead before the killer left, right? Which would also bring more questions around what did Dylan hear.
He needs to do a walkthrough inside that house, and that house needs to not be destroyed prior to somebody being convicted for this crime. What do they have to hide? I don't like secrets, ladies and gentlemen, and I do not get a good feeling for what they're up to here. Whether Bryan Kohberger's guilty or not, do not destroy the house. Also, I do think it's worth mentioning Halloween Ends. That came out on October 14th. And that involves Michael Myers and a local dork. The local dork ended up going on a crazy crime spree with a big knife. He felt empowered by Michael Myers. And then approximately 30 days after this movie's released, the Moscow slayings happened. I do see some super similarities here. And no, video games and horror movies do not affect everyone. However, they certainly plant seeds in people that are very unstable.
Maybe, right? Maybe whoever committed this crime saw the Halloween movie and took inspiration from it, I guess is what he's trying to say. I don't know. I have a hard time buying into stuff like that unless there's like hard evidence that it happened, because there could be, we all have this issue where we want to understand something and then we'll dismiss certain things and say, well, no, that doesn't make sense, right? So this couldn't be the case because it doesn't make sense. But we're not talking about somebody who's making rational choices. We're talking about somebody who has decided to take the lives of 4 people, right? So just because things don't logically add up, as far as the actions of the suspect or the actions of the killer. It doesn't necessarily mean that it should make sense to someone using logic and reason, right?
They can be really motivational for somebody that's feeling unhinged. Somebody that doesn't feel like they fit into society too well. Somebody that's at their breaking point and they're ready to snap, and then they snap. And I want you to know that I haven't forgotten about Buddy. Buddy's a victim in this case. Buddy passed away in October of 2022. The police immediately said there was no connection. There hadn't even been any arrests made in either case. So how could they possibly confidently make that statement to the public when nobody had been arrested and no suspects had been named in either case? Buddy...
I think back then the police had said that they felt like what happened to Buddy was like neighborhood kids or something. But what kind of neighborhood kids are doing that to a dog? I'm sorry, guys. I don't see... I know there could be some bad kids that would do something like that, but I don't see neighborhood kids doing that, right? I'm sorry. But I agree with Drip Drop here, where how can you know that it's not connected at all when you haven't made an arrest in either case? You don't know who committed what. How do you know that this person had nothing to do with this or that? I mean, maybe there's no evidence of them being connected, but to just dismiss it, it's possible it could have been connected. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into Buddy the dog. Now, I love dogs, but when we're, weighing 4 humans and a dog, my interest is going to be researching about the humans, right? More than the dog. But if the dog is connected, that could help you solve the other case. So far, they're saying there's no connection. I'd love to know why they say that there's no connection.
He passed away about 1 week after Halloween Ends was released. This is some sort of sick shrine that Brent Kopacka's friends set up for him. Check.
Was there an animal that gets done that way in Hollywood Ends? I haven't watched that movie at all. But if any of you have, and there's something similar to that happened in that movie too, let me know.
This out. As you can see here, there's some sort of big machete stuck into a stool. There's sheaths and knives and horror movie memorabilia. You can see Ghostface in the back. He seemed to really like the movie It. It is a real sick horror movie and book. Some of you have seen it, some of you have read the book. You know what I'm talking about. It's very disturbing. And anyone that would want Ghostface in their home might just have an infatuation with big knives and slashing. But did you see what I saw in that picture? Let me direct your attention to this. Right here. What is with this ripped blue fabric / possibly piece of a collar here? Let me put a picture of Buddy on the screen here. Are these the same? Is that Buddy's collar wrapped around the machete?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to... What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about that collar? Does that look like that collar? I mean, it's a hell of a coincidence, right? And that it's wrapped around this big-ass knife. That's insane.
Eddie, why is it ripped as if it looks like it's been cut with a knife? There could be any fabric in the world wrapped around the machete. But for some reason, it's a blue piece of fabric that looks just like Buddy's collar. Leave me a comment down below. Is that the same? Yes or no? Because me personally, I have my own thoughts on it. And it gives me chills.
I think it definitely looks like it, and it definitely could be. You would think they would be able to find that out if they looked into it at all, right? But I guess the question would be, would the cops even be looking into that at all? You got Washington police over here, and the Buddy, the dog, that happened in Moscow, right? So that might have never been looked into whatsoever. Where is it now? And I don't know. I feel like my main objection to Brent Kopacka being involved in this at all is that we haven't heard anything from Kohberger's defense that would even point us to, well, anything to do with Brent Kopacka, right? I'm trying to think to say that while I say that, would we hear anything from him? But yeah, I feel like we would. I feel like we would at least be hearing from the defense about how there are other suspects out there and how this could have been the work of this person or that person. We haven't heard that. We haven't heard that there's any connection. We haven't heard the defense say that Kohberger gave a friend a ride or loaned his car out or anything like that, right? But it would make a lot more sense if Kopaka might have borrowed a car from Kohberger, turned Kohberger's phone off that was left in the car, used a weapon that was in the car. Who knows, right? I'm not saying that happened. That's what I get. A lot of people don't understand when I start talking. It's just my mind working, right? And when you start thinking about things, it's like, well, that's possible. And then you have to start looking into the probability that something like that could happen. So just because I say it out loud and I'm thinking about it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I believe happened. But it's worth a thought, right? It's worth time to think, could something like that happen? If they did know each other, could the defense come in and say, this person was a friend of Kohberger. He possibly took Kohberger's car that night. If the car was connected, but I mean, it seems like the car is not even connected, right? But if they knew each other, it opens the door of possibilities on the car being on camera, whether that was or wasn't Kohberger's car, about the weapon used and how Kohberger's DNA could be on it, but him not be the one to commit the crimes, how Kohberger's phone was turned off and not getting the signal and then turned back on. But you would think somebody like Kohberger would know to leave the phone at home, unless somebody borrows Kohberger's car and his phone is left in the car. They realize it, turn it off on the way, turn it back on the way back home, leave it there. It's possible, right? And that's all that the jury has to know, is that there's another possibility, and then they have to grade the probabilities, right? That's all I'm saying. When I start talking about things like that, that's what I mean.
Here's a picture of Buddy's owners shortly after the crime. You can see they're holding up a black collar. However, in all the pictures of Buddy's wearing a blue collar. So why aren't they holding up the blue collar?
I'm going to read this comment from Melissa Jade because she says, verify it for yourself. I took the time, looked into it myself. Brent has never lived in PA, and that house he doxed is associated with a completely different family. It's simply not true. Now, I don't know whether she's saying Brent never lived in PA. We can find that out. I'll let you guys know what I find out about that later, if Drip Drop is wrong there. But that house could be associated with a different family, and Kopaka still have lived in it before. It's a rental, right? It had to be a rental when he lived in it, if he lived in it. But, I mean, if you've already verified that, that's your word, and people can do their own research, and I'll do my own research, but I appreciate you saying something if that is indeed true, and that Drip Drop is mistaken here.
Unless it was taken and they don't have it in their possession anymore. This is a true crime circus investigation. We need answers to these questions because Buddy's family still does not have resolution, they don't have any answers, and they certainly don't have closure. Buddy's owners have been in the media and they've said nobody has come back to ask them any further questions or investigate Buddy's passing ever since the crime happened. They're lost, they're confused, they're sad, and they're grieving.
So, apparently police aren't investigating any links. Hold on 1 second. To maintain smooth streaming. Well, what's going on here? How can we fix this? It looks like my stream has fell off. Can you guys hear me? Like, is everything good or no? Because my stream health is showing poor all of a sudden. That's not good. What is happening? Well, maybe it'll work itself out then. Let's continue.
But maybe one of you out there knows something. If so, leave an anonymous tip down below. Your identity will be safe here at the circus. Also, Brent Kopacka's friend was in the news, and you could say he was acting a bit odd. Allegedly. Do you think that shrine is normal? It didn't seem like a very loving shrine. Shot glasses, horror movie memorabilia, sheaths, knives, machetes, or ripped blue collar. These are all things that...
Okay, so that stuff does look kind of messed up in a way, right? But I have a 6-year-old son, and he collects knives, right? I collect knives, so obviously my little boy, he wants to do it too, right? And he collects knives. I got him a few karambits the other day. You know, those curled ones with the little hole at the bottom. He was so tickled to death about those. And my mom took him to the St. Nick's Knives, which is a knife shop here in Alabama, and they're pretty popular. If you're into knives, you know about St. Nick's most likely. But she bought him like this $100 Case XX Hawkbill pruner style knife. It's got a curved blade on it too. And we put them up. He doesn't play with them, but it's... Well, I say he doesn't play with them. He whittles on stuff with them with my supervision, but other times they're put up. But he collects knives like that. And he likes scary movies like, not scary necessarily, but like Venom from Spider-Man, the bad guys and stuff. He thinks that it's all funny, and he likes It, the clown, even though he's never watched the movies. He's just, seen little YouTube videos or stuff like that with It, the clown, and he thinks that's all cool. So I wouldn't say that, like, just because you have all this knives and horror movie memorabilia that you would do anything crazy like that, but it's always a possibility, and you have to look at all the context clues around to really make a decision, right? If you have one thing here, one thing there, you could pull things out of my life to make me look like a horrible person, or you could nitpick it and pull things out to make me look like a great person. But in reality, I'm just an average person, Anyway.
Raise red flags. This needs to be investigated. We need answers. What are the odds they both have the exact same initials? BK and BK. Brent Kopacka, Bryan Kohberger. Brent Kopacka gets passed away, and then Bryan Kohberger gets pulled over 7 hours later. I know a lot of you out there are connecting the dots during this episode, and I've connected them too. I think we're onto something in this investigation. We certainly haven't been told everything. They won't even tell Bryan Kohberger's own defense attorney about the DNA investigation with the little magical tree that led directly to Bryan Kohberger. Also, to backtrack very slightly...
Okay, let's talk about that for a second too. The prosecutors not wanting to turn over certain evidence to the defense, right? And it's the genealogical, I'm not even going to struggle with the word, 23andMe, Ancestry.com, whatever it is that they use to pull their sample from. I believe, this is complete speculation on my part, but I believe that Kohberger's sister reported him. I think she saw that he was driving the type of car that they were kind of looking for. And maybe they were already watching him, whatever. But I think that she noticed him acting strange with the gloves. We're assuming, right? This is speculation. And she reported and possibly gave a sample of her DNA. And that's what the prosecutors are trying to keep under wraps for now. Is that his own sister provided DNA because she was suspicious of him. Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. But it's, to me, ever since everybody started saying that his sister had made these comments and she had suspected him and noticed his weird behavior, and then with the prosecution fighting over how they made the connection to Kohberger's father, well, if one of his siblings gave DNA and then they had their sample, right, of what they pulled off the knife sheath, and they compared it to that and realized, okay, that's a sibling of this person on the paternal side, then they would know that Bryan Kohberger's father's DNA is the parent of the DNA on the knife sheath. And then, of course, they swabbed it and matched Bryan Kohberger directly to the knife sheath later. But I believe that might be why they're fighting so hard on that. And then the training records that they don't want to give. For the 3 officers that the defense have asked for the training records. And even the judge said it sure seems like the defense have a pretty good idea of how this case is going to go and why they want those specific training records. They absolutely deserve to get those training records. When you have investigators, and those investigators are using their training to do their job, then you want to know what that training was, because if they can find something where they were trained wrong or where they did something against their training, then they can use that against the police officers. Absolutely every defense attorney is going to do this. Now you can look at it like, oh, well, they're just trying to play games, like the prosecution said, they're trying to discredit the officers, do this. Yeah, because they're trying to defend their client, right? And it's all about rights. It's all about how things went down, how things happened. It's all important. They most definitely will get awarded those training records, and they'll get more training records for more police officers. Depending on how the prosecution's going to present their case, they could still be getting training records during the trial from certain officers that they find out are going to be witnesses, because the defense's job is to introduce doubt. Everybody seems to forget that. Everybody seems to want the defense to prove that Bryan Kohberger couldn't have done this crime, otherwise we're just going to sell him up the river. But the burden of proof falls on the prosecutor, and the defense doesn't have to prove he didn't do it. That's huge, and people can't, even if they say, oh, I understand that, yeah, of course, the prosecutor has to prove it. You don't understand it if you believe that Bryan Kohberger needs to give you... You don't understand it if you believe that Bryan Kohberger needs to give you something saying he didn't do it. All he needs to do is introduce doubt into the prosecutor's theory. So if he has anything that goes against what their theory is, they're going to ask those questions, make those statements, right? And then for whatever the prosecutor can't prove, the defense is going to highlight that, and they're going to give alternatives. And when they give, well, can you rule this alternative out? If the prosecutor says no, then the defense has won their case, right? All they have to do is introduce doubt, reasonable doubt. Will a reasonable person have any doubt that he committed this crime after all the evidence has been laid out to them? Depending on what that evidence is, matters, right? And if it's all circumstantial and you have one person who feels that there's some doubt that Kohberger committed this crime, then he could be found not guilty. Now, that being said, none of us, at least me, I've seen some YouTubers I question on this, but none of us want to see a guilty man walk free. I don't want Kohberger to beat the system and walk free if he committed these crimes. But I also don't want the system to railroad Bryan Kohberger. I like to look at it as if I were the defendant and I knew I was innocent, and the prosecutor was enacting certain tactics to paint me as guilty even though I knew I was innocent. Would that be okay? If it follows the law, it's okay. If it doesn't follow the law, it's not. Morality comes into play. Now, the prosecutor shouldn't be seeking to find a guilty verdict. The prosecutor should be seeking justice. Now, if they can prove Kohberger did this, then Kohberger should face the consequences. If they can't prove he did it, then he shouldn't. Regardless. I don't want to see a guilty man walk away, but I'd rather see that than an innocent man serve the time or pay the price for the crime in this case, since we are talking about a death penalty case now. Just saying. Let's jump back to this because I'm about to have to get off here pretty soon.
Because I just remembered a very important date. December 6th is when the police served a warrant on DoorDash. So to put that into the timeline, so you go from December 6th of them serving a warrant on DoorDash. December 7th is when we were first told about a white Hyundai Elantra. 5 days later, Bryan Kohberger leaves town with his daddy. And then 2 days after that, Brent Kopacka is passed away by SWAT team. Make of it what you will, but there was a lot happening that week, don't you think? I just wanted to throw that in there because that is a piece of this puzzle and it's an important part of this timeline. The DoorDash warrant on December 6th. I've got a lot more information regarding this case because I've been doing a lot of investigating behind the scenes.
Okay, let's talk about the DoorDash for a second too, because, you know, Sleuthy Goosey has the theory that Kohberger might be the DoorDash driver. And then there goes a lot into that, right, of somebody could have transferred his touch DNA from that to the sheath and all this and all that. No, I don't want to dive into the whole theory, but I would like to ask you guys what you think. Is Bryan the DoorDash driver? Is it possible? You know, is there, on these cameras that show the white Hyundai Elantra, is there another vehicle delivering the DoorDash? Is there a second vehicle between these Ring cameras and security cameras that show the DoorDash driver come? And are there any videos that we, know about that has a person walking to or from a car or noises, right? I know T-Rev had a new video from the what was it, something Lane Apartments, where it has the car pull up at like 4:05 and then pull back off at like 4:25 or something like that. But are there any videos that the public doesn't know about yet that gives a better description, right?
And rest assured, there's a lot more videos in this series coming because the investigation is not complete. The state hasn't been forthcoming, so we're going to see what we can find on our own, because this is our investigation.
So far, I started this video saying that I've seen nothing to prove to me that Brent Kopacka was involved with the Idaho 4 case or that he knew Bryan Kohberger. Drip Drop told us that there is the connection where they both lived in Pennsylvania around the same area within 10 minutes of each other, and then they both lived in Washington around the same area within 10 minutes of each other. It is unlikely that they would have never bumped into each other and yet had the same path around the same times, right? Like moving from here to here within a couple months of each other with no connection whatsoever. But I haven't seen anything that tells me that there was. Just a really strange coincidence. And I guess it just, how much you want to put into that coincidence so far. Thought there would be more in this video though.
Is Bryan Kohberger guilty? Maybe, maybe not, but we need to see actual evidence to know for sure. 1122 King Road is an important piece of the puzzle. We cannot let it be destroyed. Was Brent Kopacka involved? Was he a puppet and Bryan Kohberger was the puppet master? That is a possibility because Bryan Kohberger's study was super sketch. Anyways, I believe that you and me will get to the bottom of this one way or the other. Please consider supporting this channel on Patreon.
Alright guys, so let's pull the chat up so I can see the chat again. So, what do you guys think? What is it with people who have gotten so emotionally connected to this case to where they have such a strong opinion about whether Kohberger is innocent or guilty, to the point that they will hate someone that they mostly agree with because they disagree about one certain part that's not proven or something. Why is it that people are so emotionally connected to this case? Because I report on this case. I've been following it from the very beginning, right? And I can honestly say that personally, I don't care if Brent Kohberger is innocent or guilty. I don't care personally, right? It's not going to affect my life. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. We don't have any connection whatsoever. What I'm looking at is this is what happened, and then I'm trying to figure out what I think happened and what we can prove happened, right? Just like the investigators are. And when you're getting this information, you're going to interpret it how you do. I can't figure out why people grow so attached to what they believe, whether he's guilty or not. Like, if he's not guilty, I don't want him sent to prison, right? But I feel like the evidence in the case, it either will not show that he's guilty and he'll walk, or it'll show that he's guilty and he won't. There's room for error in everything, right? Like, a guilty man could end up walking free, or an innocent man could end up being convicted. But our system, it's about as just as you're going to get when you don't have corruption in the court, right? If you don't allow the prosecutors to violate the law to try to make their case, violate this person's rights to make their case, which the defense attorneys are going to try to stop at absolutely every point, right? Then you don't let the defense attorneys, or you don't let the prosecuting attorneys violate the defense's rights, and then you have the case, the evidence is laid out, the jury makes their decision. That's about as real as you can get, because you take 12 individuals, and this is a jury of his peers, right? And those people are going to look at that evidence and they're going to decide. Where's the emotional connection? Like, if you weren't there and you don't personally know him, why would you get so upset of evidence coming out to the point that you wouldn't even acknowledge new evidence? Like, I think that Bryan Kohberger probably had something to do with this crime. I don't know that he did, right? But I feel like, based on my life experience and the information that I've heard, that it's likely he had something to do with it. So if the statute was more likely than not, I would say he's guilty. But the statute is beyond reasonable doubt. And I have a lot of doubt. It could be him. It could not be him. Right? I'm open to any new information that comes out. And I'm happy to say that he's innocent if he's innocent. I'm happy to say that he's guilty if he's guilty. I can't figure out why people get so hung up on, okay, well, because of this one aspect, I believe he's innocent, and now I'm going to ignore all this other stuff over here that makes him look guilty just because of this one aspect, or vice versa. Because of this one part, this knife sheath, I believe he's guilty, even though I'm going to ignore everything else over here that might make him look more innocent. Keep your mind open, right? Don't be committed to either. You shouldn't be on a Kohberger is guilty or Kohberger is innocent side. You should be on a, I want to watch this case, I want to find out the information, and as I find out the information, I want to make sure that no citizen's rights are being violated and that he gets a fair trial. And at the end of the day, if his rights are not violated and he gets a fair trial, whether he's found innocent or guilty is irrelevant, as long as the right person is being charged. Now, when he's found not guilty, right? If he is found not guilty, then when he's found not guilty, well, now we've got to go back and say, okay, well, if he didn't do it, who did? And start all over again. And that's my big fear for this case. And why I want things to be followed up on and certain questions to be answered so that we can put to rest certain theories or bring new ones up. The gag order in this case is why people are so interested in it still. If the prosecution, if the state, whatever, if they wanted this case, if they wanted people to lose interest in this case, they would leak out the evidence. They would remove the gag order and they would show the evidence to the public and say this, right? But they can't do that because they can't get a fair trial afterwards. Even though there was no gag order in YNW Melly's case, he's a celebrity. There's a lot of people watching his case right now too. A lot of people have known about all this evidence that's coming out in trial way before the trial. And they've made up their minds, right? And most people weren't even talking about it before the trial started because it had died off because they had got the answers to their questions. If the state of Idaho and Moscow Police Department wanted people to stop being so interested in this case, they would let us see the evidence they have, and then people would decide whether they think he's innocent or guilty, and then that would get rid of the speculation for the most part. It would get rid of the interest in the case, because the only thing that's keeping me reporting on this case and following this case is the fact that there's certain things we don't know that matter, that would mean Kohberger's innocent or Kohberger's guilty, right? And if they don't have anything, if the prosecution doesn't have anything that clearly lays out that Kohberger is guilty, then no matter what at trial, when the story doesn't add up and there's a lot of reasons to doubt certain things that the prosecution says, then he's going to walk. And when that happens, I hope he's actually not guilty. But that means that there's still a killer walking around in that area or somewhere if they've left the area. What do you guys think about it? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to see more, and we'll see you later.